You see, this is a person who is spiritual but doesn't want to be considered religious. And so in order for them to facilitate that and still hold on to the Bible, is that they have to then try to make the Old Testament into metaphorical stories, especially the stories that makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So he's trying to say that Cain is a metaphorical story that talks about your lower vibrational self and how the lower vibrational self murdered the higher vibrational self. And so you have to focus on being the high vibrational person. And that's what the Cain and Abel story is actually representing, your higher self versus your lower self. But let me ask you a question. If it's all a metaphorical story, then the lower vibrational self is born before the higher vibrational self, and you must come into that, right? Good. But here's the problem. When you're God, then after the murder, your God then promised Cain that he would protect him, and that if anybody was to subdue him, to kill him, seek revenge against him, seek revenge against the lower vibrational self, that your God will then punish that person 7 times over. So you are saying metaphorically that if anyone attempts to kill their lower vibrational self, to which you said that, the higher self kills your lower self. If anyone attempts to kill the lower vibrational self, then the higher self will then be punished 7 times over. You see how it doesn't work as a metaphor, because you can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways. And what would be the metaphor of the lower self is the self that goes and is building cities and elevates the livelihood of man, where the lower self just stays out and just be a little shepherd. I mean, the higher self just stays out and be a little shepherd. Cain went to the city of Nod, built the city, and had a wife, had family, the whole deal. The lower self goes out, builds family. And I know you're going to say, well, that was the line of Cain. They were all evil. You have no idea if all those people were evil. You're just choosing that based on the narrative of a story that is trying to make the Canaanite people, or make one group good and the other group bad, to try to follow a line from Adam all the way to Abraham, and that's it. So they then jump with the line of Seth. And then what is Seth supposed to be? The reborn, the remake of Abel? Is that what he is? But then even the people in the line of Seth was also part of the evil people who was on the planet, who had to be destroyed by the flood. So even the higher vibrational self of Seth would still just turn out into be lower vibrational beings who are committing evil and wickedness all over the world. And that's why your God had to destroy the world in the story of Noah. So even the higher vibrational selves are evil. What's the allegory? What's the metaphor here for Seth? You see, no, these people who wrote these stories, they took those stories to be literal. They thought they were talking about literal people who lived, who did exactly what they said they did in the book, and that those people are the historical people of that culture of what becomes your Hebrew and your Israelites and now your Jewish people. It's the same. It's a literal story for them. It's not metaphorical. The only reason why you say it's metaphorical is because you don't want to be attached to religion, and you know that the Old Testament has some of the most heinous things of creation, heinous things of possibility of anybody. Most heinous things that anybody could have ever done are found in your Old Testament. And you want to separate yourself from that. And you want to call yourself spiritual. You may not personally, but you may. This is what the thought process I get from people who bring this argument to me. You may not, you call yourself spiritual, but you want to hold on to this Bible. And so the only way to do it is to change what it means. It meant what it meant to those people back then, and you can't change it to mean something else. Otherwise, what you're saying is that your God wrote a book, gave it to people, and billions upon billions of people over hundreds and thousands of years had no idea what the hell the book was actually about. And that it is only now that you've broken the code. Yes, and I mean to say that sarcastically, because it's bullshit. The Hezekiah, Solomon, David, if those two existed, they believed that book was literal. The people who lived during that day thought it was literal. The people who lived in 100 BCE, the 100 CE, people who live in 500 CE, on up to almost now, until about the 1800s, took it literally, because that's what it was meant to be taken literally, not metaphorically. And I know Galatians says that the Abrahamic stuff is allegorical, But that is somebody in the New Testament writing hundreds of years, maybe possibly 1,000 years later, trying to make all the bullshit of Abraham fit. Make it cool for Abraham to have slept with his slave wife and kicked her and the child out into the desert, not once, but 2 times, that he punked out to his wife and sent her out into the desert. What is the allegory we're supposed to learn from that? What is the metaphor of that? Huh? What is it? What is it? If you have a jump off and you get the jump off pregnant, that you're supposed to ignore them? Or the first woman that you have a child with, but then you're with your other woman and you have a child with her, that you're supposed to put them out into the desert, put them out into the pasture, send them out and don't take care of them, don't help them? Is that the metaphor? Is that the lesson we're supposed to learn from Abraham with Hagar? That's the lesson? That Jacob had 2 slave wives, Zilpah and Bilhah, that those slave wives are providers of the majority of the tribes of Israel, that we're supposed to, have all these slave wives and perpetuate our lineage through them? Is that the lesson? Is that the lesson? What's the lesson? What's the metaphor here? You see how it doesn't work? Because these people took it literally, and they still take it literally, because it was meant to be taken literally. But hey, you want to hold on to the Bible, I have no problems letting it go. But for everybody else, what do you think? Always remember, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. The link is in the comments to get the shirts. Good journey, good vibrations.